Good afternoon, everyone on the East, and good morning, everyone on the West. This is John Garmendi with Sony's Professional Solutions. Thank you for joining another in Sony's series of AV Solutions webinars. We started these webinars in response to the COVID crisis in order to provide our end users, channel partners, and consultant community with the most current information on Sony's professional products and solutions. Today's topic will be BRAVIA Professional Displays, Pro Settings Mode with a demonstration. Joining me today as our main presenter is Kiana Pompa. Kiana is our sales support engineer with the Western Zone. Kiana has experience in both IT cloud support and professional AV solutions. Also joining us a little bit later will be Anthony Cianfrano, our product manager for the Q&A portion. Couple of housekeeping notes. Please submit your questions via the question box on the GoToMeeting panel. I will be providing some web links in the chat panel to some of the relevant websites referred to during this presentation. And as a reminder, if any of our channel partners or end users would like to go into a little bit more detail than what we'll be covering today, you can always contact your local account manager or sales support engineer. As a reminder, our Technology Tuesday topics have included laser projectors, commercial displays, PTZ cameras, digital signage, IP microphone, beamforming microphone, edge analytics, and in the future we'll be having crystal LED, TEOS Workplace Solutions, SXRD 4K projectors, and other topics. Please, by all means, send your feedback on the topics that you'd like to see covered in future presentations. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our main presenter, Kiana. Kiana, please take it away.
Thank you, John, for the introduction. Today's agenda will consist of the following items. We'll start with our BRAVIA Professional Displays, and we'll quickly go over some product highlights for those of you who are not part of the last BRAVIA webinar. Sony offers a complete lineup from 43 to 85 inches rated for portrait and landscape, as well as 24/7 operation. We also have touchscreens available for annotation and meeting room use. There's a great sales promotion available. So if you're in the market for a touchscreen, I recommend reaching out to your Sony rep. We are also TA compliant, and we have a 3-year standard warranty already included with an optional 5-year extension. With that, I would also like to go over our new 3-year advanced exchange program. Our policy states that within 90 days of purchase, if your product is damaged during shipment or a technical issue occurs, within those first 90 days, Sony will replace your unit with an A stock unit. After the 90 days, within those first 3 years, if anything happens to your Sony display, we will also still replace it with a B stock unit, and if a B stock unit is not available, then an A stock unit will be provided. The important takeaway here is that you can have peace of mind since your device is covered for up to 3 years and an optional 5-year extension. So let's get into the technical side of things. So our Sony BRAVIA line does come system on chip, and it's such a hot button word in today's industry. When you use the BRAVIA, it's essentially a computer where you can run custom HTML5 applications and Android applications. We also have more than 100 APIs available on the BRAVIA Knowledge Center. The system on chip technology has allowed our Sony development team to build really neat features for corporate, signage, and hotel use with no external boxes needed. So with the help of Pro Mode, we can really drill down every setting needed to specify a specific custom behavior. For example, in a corporate use case, we can enable USB camera. In a hotel setting, we can set up an account expiration. So when users sign into their Netflix account, for example, the user will automatically be logged out upon power off. For digital signage, we can disable the ambient light sensor to give you the brightest image. We can accomplish all of this and more by using the Pro Mode tool. I get so many questions from users in regards to the 3 different modes, so this is what our demo will consist of today. But before we switch to the demo portion, I want to ensure that you have an understanding of the Pro mode, how we can enable it. When you purchase your Sony Pro Bravia display, it will be in normal mode, which means you have access to all consumer features like the Play Store, apps like Netflix, and full access to your consumer settings. When we want to set up our display for commercial use, we need to first enable the Pro settings mode. In this mode, both consumer and professional menus are accessible. There will also be a blue banner on the top of your display that states Pro settings are in progress. There are two methods to access the Pro mode, either using the Pro Mode Tool app or the special key sequence you see here in the PowerPoint slide. When we finish enabling Pro Mode and all of the settings are selected, we will actually reboot and enable Pro Mode so that all custom settings are enabled. This functionality will be shown on our demo portion. But before I do, I also would like to refer to these case studies. I believe that Pro Mode tool has been Sony's best kept secret. There are so many universities and corporations using our professional displays for not only our excellent picture quality and reliability, but a big deciding factor has been these professional settings. Here's an example of University of Central Florida using our meeting room functionality to show digital signage when a display is not in use. Rice University also uses Pro Mode to lock students out of the setting. So now that you know about Pro Mode, we have a couple of demo use cases for you. I specifically selected these two examples based on the high frequency of calls I get from customers. The first option is going to be in a corporate meeting room space. We will set up all of the options on the left-hand side, but the key benefit is that it's user-friendly, it locks down settings, and all of these settings can be exported via USB stick if you have multiple panels to set up. Overall, it will save you time and money. The second use case is for all the integrators here on the call. For all of those out in the field actually setting up these displays, I will also go over how to access all of these modes in our menu. In the world of Sony, we use different verbiage. For example, CAC control is called BRAVIA Sync in our menu. So at this time, I will switch over to our demo portion. This demo portion was produced here in my home office. We did trim down a little bit of the area so that we could save some time with the display reboots. After these use cases, please stick around for your Q&A portion with myself and product manager Anthony Sanfrano. You might need to raise the volume on your speakers to listen in.
So we're going to hop into how to enable and use your Pro Bravia display in corporate environment, specifically corporate meeting rooms. So the first thing that we're going to do, if you just purchased your Pro Bravia display, you open it up, you're currently in normal mode, you want to switch into Pro settings mode as we discussed earlier. Once you enable Pro settings, it will actually reboot your display and it will take us into the menu where we can set up our professional display with special settings to make it really easy for you to use this as in a meeting room without any control systems or expensive hardware. It's built system on chip and special to our Pro Bravia line. So once it reboots, we'll reconnect and then we'll pick it up from there. So our display has rebooted, we reconnected, and now we're going to jump into our Pro settings. So if you see blue banner on top where it says Pro settings in progress, now we're going to be able to see the special menu called Pro settings. When you enter the menu, we can actually view all current settings that are set up by default here. So once we're done enabling all of our features, we could see any of the changes here on this list, or if you forget or if you want to verify, you could use this functionality. The first thing we are going to set up is a optimized PC display. We're just going to simply enable it. This is a use case for when you're using your laptop or PC into the HDMI inputs on your display. It will optimize based on that specific resolution for the best viewing options. We are also going to enable wake on signal. There's a couple of functionalities here, but the key that I want to enable is input change only. That way, every time you change the input of your HDMI, it will use automatic input switching without a control system. If you select, for example, always enable, that means anytime you plug in via HDMI, the display will automatically turn on. If you unplug, the display will also turn off. So in this case, we just want to use input change only. We're also going to set up a home key behavior. In this area, you can specify the home functionality of the home button. We are going to be using standard and custom menu. That way, this will allow us to toggle back and forth between the regular menu and a custom application. If you're an HTML5 developer, you can actually create your own applications here. So in this case, because we're using it as a professional meeting room display, I'm going to specify the Sony professional website. So as soon as you power on your display in Pro mode, when you press the home button, this will actually take you to our website. And if you have a mouse and keyboard plugged into your display, it allows you to use your Bravia display as basically a computer to browse the internet. The next functionality that we're going to enable is Pro Mode Lock. And the reason being is that we don't want users that are not familiar with these settings to have access to them. So anytime you go into Pro settings mode, although it's already pretty difficult and not as intuitive if you are just a regular user and you have no idea what this menu is, just to be safe, we want to lock them out. So we're going to set up this pin, and I'm just going to make it very, very easy just for the sake of this test. I would advise that you write this number down because the only way to recover is if you completely reset your display. The next functionality is initial input source. This option, we can specify an external input, a startup app. So if you're an HTML5 developer or an Android developer, you can create custom applications to boot up upon power on. In this use case, we are going to use an Android application. We're going to specify TEOS Connect Receiver. We will be going over TEOS in more depth on the next week's webinar, but for now, we're going to use this app to be able to mirror wirelessly from our devices into that meeting room space, and that app will automatically be launched upon starting Pro mode. We are also going to set up some volume restrictions. So we're going to reset volume on power on. So that way, say if someone was using it at 75% volume capacity, we don't want the volume blasting as soon as you turn it on. So every time we reboot, let's just say we'll set it up at 10 and then maximum at 75. We're also going to enable power scheduling. This way we can be energy efficient, especially if we know this is in a boardroom, regular business hours, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. We can enable that schedule. And I'll also enable it weekly, specifying Monday through Friday. We're going to set up a periodic restart. This is recommended since we are a system on chip and an Android operating system to just periodically restart at least weekly if possible. You can set it up at any time that you'd like. We'll just leave the default 12 a.m. That sounds like a great time to me. And I will leave it at daily. And then just so that you know, force restart while TV is on is currently disabled, but you can enable it if you'd like. Just going to leave it off. The next application will be external inputs. This is actually the HDMI banners on the top of the display, and I'll just show you very quickly what I mean. So we're going to use without labels, use without labels, use without labels. This is actually another way to actually disable an input completely. so not used. You could disable this whole functionality with HDMI 4, for example. And then I'll just leave the labels on HDMI 3 just for the sake of testing. And then this is actually very, very, very important because if you forget to enable the applications, then you will not see them on your splash screen. So if you want users to have access to them, make sure that you enable them before you leave. So I'm currently using TeamViewer to showcase my display here in my home office. So I want to make sure I enable that so we can reconnect when we go into Pro mode. I also want to enable digital signage. And I'm also going to enable our Pro mode tool that allows us to toggle back and forth. Usually, if you didn't set up a pin like we did earlier, it might not be recommended to show the Pro mode tool because that allows users to toggle back and forth between the menu. If this is disabled, then you would all you would need to do is enable the key sequence of the display, mute, volume up, home to get back into the Pro settings area. So we finished the very end of our Pro settings list and how to optimize based on our meeting room application. So at this moment, before we leave, what I want to do is export Pro settings onto the USB stick that's already attached to my display. So what this is doing is taking all of the settings that I currently just set up, exporting it into a USB file. That way, when we need to set up 10 additional displays in the same functionality, we can quickly just plug in that same USB stick into the display. It will automatically prompt me if I would like to load these settings, and you just click yes, and your display is set up very, very quickly, and it just reboots and it works as it should. So while this is exporting, all we're going to do is wait until everything gets loaded onto the USB stick, and then we'll move on to the next section where we'll actually enable Pro mode, and then we will see all of the settings that we just set up. So at this point, again, let's switch over to Pro mode. Now the display will reboot, and I will reconnect as soon as the display reboots. And we're back. So this is actually a view of the Pro Bravia right after it reboots. So once you press home, this is exactly how our Sony Professional website looks. You can actually scroll down and select areas. So for example, professional products. We're going to look at professional displays, LED walls, software, and it'll actually take you to it. It works exactly just like a computer would. And if you need more information on our Pro displays, this is a good website and resource. And then again, if you press home, it will take you back to just your regular home menu. And if you see here, if I try to click on settings, it'll say application unavailable because this is for the locked out user mode. They can't change any Wi-Fi settings or anything like that. I also want to take note on the little things that we did set up that we can actually test. So for example, volume control, I just raised one volume up and it's at 11, so it did default back to 10 when you reboot. Also our banners, for example, right now I'm pressing HDMI 1. When you press HDMI 1, since we disabled them, there's completely no banners, but there's nothing plugged into HDMI, so it'll be a blank screen. As if you recall, we left 4 disabled and 3 does have the banners, so all of those are testing out. So I know that was a lot of functionality for just one display, but we have one more scenario to go over, and that's actually integrator mode. So there's actually no specific way of saying this is integration mode on our Pro Bravia display. It's again just strictly the way that we manage functionalities. So I really thought it was very important to go over the way that we can enable RS-232, enable Crestron Connected, how to use Kramer, onboard our display. We're not going to get too in the weeds of things. We just want to make sure that you as an integrator know how these applications can be enabled. A lot of the times we use different lingo in the Sony world. For example, we support EC 1.4, but we call it here in Sony Bravia Sync. So we'll go over all of those functionalities. So once we reboot, we'll start it off and we'll just go through all the menus, and hopefully that will help you out in the field. As soon as it reboots, we will reconnect. So I'm back in Pro Settings mode. We're going to actually initialize all of our Pro settings that we just set up earlier so that we can go over the functionalities. So we'll start from scratch again. Reset complete. So the first one we're going over is how to enable IP control. Very, very easy. We're going to hop into the network, select home network, and enable IP control. Simple IP, in this case, it's already enabled. One key thing to note is authentication. If you want to have a pre-shared key, you specify, and then you specify a pre-shared key here if you want your network more secure. The next area is RS-232. All you have to do is select via serial port and you're done. Of course, writing your RS-232 code is a completely different animal. So we always advise you to use the BRAVIA Knowledge Center as your initial resource. If you are writing custom RS-232 controls, something special to our Sony Pro BRAVIA is that you have to set the standby enabled command. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to your local sales support engineer, your account manager, your Sony rep. But I will also have John Garmenti add the link to our Sony Knowledge Center in the chat window. The next functionality is actually using Kramer control. So in Pro settings, it's really cool ever since the Android 8 update, you can actually sideload applications with ease. So if you see right here, we have this install APK menu option. If you do not have a USB dongle attached, you will not see this banner or option. I've had countless calls where they're calling me to install a custom APK and they cannot find this menu. It isn't until you plug in your USB stick that you will see it. So once it's inputted, you will see the APKs that you currently have on your USB stick. We have Kramer control here. Just a little heads up on Kramer, you actually have to download the APK directly from the Kramer site. So you would have to reach out to Kramer directly for this application. It's not currently and readily available in the Google Play Store. So once you install it, we'll be able to launch it. Simply click on open. And this is what you see, Kramer control. Of course, all of these functionality will be directly served through Kramer. We just want you to know how to install it using the Pro BRAVIA system on chip technology, and that the option is there for all of you integrators here on the call. The next option we will enable is CEC control. So again, this is in the sync menu. So there's actually a button on the top of your remote that says sync menu, and it will take you into those settings. So you want to make sure that BRAVIA sync control is on if you're using any applications with CEC control. They're already enabled, which is great. And the last application will be Crestron Connected. Crestron Connected is a little bit different on our Pro BRAVIA displays. We use it in one-step settings as a startup service. So all you have to do is enable the Crestron Connected app, and we actually do have to reboot the display for this to be enabled. It doesn't matter whether you set it up in normal mode or Pro mode. Both functionalities will work, but just recall in Pro mode, you do have to actually specify that you will enable this app. So just for the sake of testing, we're just going to normal mode. And again, all of those settings are not specific to any mode. If you enable them, RS-232, Kramer control, Crestron, what have you, they will work across all three different modes. So once we reboot, the last option will actually open up the Crestron Connected app so that you could see the splash screen. It'll give you ways to input your controller options, and that will be the end of the integrator setup mode. As soon as the display reboots, we will reconnect. And we're back. We're launching in normal mode. So now we see the Crestron Connected app here as an option. We'll open it. All you have to do is specify the IP address of your controller, verify that your hex and ports are the same, and you just save, and then you are Crestron connected, just like that. So we have gone over 2 functionalities: how to use your ProBravia for a meeting room use, and also how to enable all of the functionalities that an integrator might want to make sure that it will work with any third-party control system. So if you have questions, we will transfer into the Q&A portion of this webinar.
So at this point, we do have the Q&A portion, so that will be with myself and Anthony Sanfrano, so we can get started.
Okay, great job, Kiana. Thank you. We certainly do have some questions. Let's take a look here. So Glenn is asking, will these functions be available on the XBR65A8G?
Anthony, can you take that one?
Yeah, so all the BRAVIA displays have access to Pro Mode. That particular model we don't sell through the professional channel, so there's kind of a gray area there, because if you need support for that product, you're going to have to call into our support for Pro Mode operation, because the consumer group doesn't utilize that function. So you would have to call us for support, and our support line may or may not recognize that number as a professional model. And so you may have to explain yourself a little bit deeper. But to answer your question, yes, the Pro Mode operation is available on all BRAVIA units. It's a matter of support. We support the units that we sell through our channel. That's not one of the ones we sell through our channel.
Thanks, Anthony. Question from Corey. Can these be controlled over IP using Control4 platform?
Yes, IP control is available over Wi-Fi and wired.
And another question, where can I find the list of supported APIs?
The list of supported APIs is available in the BRAVIA Knowledge Center, and I did see that John Grimany did add the link to the BRAVIA Knowledge Center. Correct, John?
That is correct. I
Awesome.
posted it in the chat panel. Got a question from several folks asking about recordings and the slide deck from this webinar. I also posted a link to our YouTube channel and the associated playlist for all of our recorded Tech Tuesday webinars. So this one will appear in approximately a week on that channel, maybe sooner, maybe by the end of the week. Let's see what else we've got here. Okay, a couple of them were answered already. Does this support the Intune app to add a Sony BRAVIA display to an MDM to get the complicated Wi-Fi password? That question's from Ben.
Anthony, do you want to take this one? I'm not familiar with Intune. I'm not sure if you are.
Yeah, I'm not either. So if the person asking the question could give a little bit more detail, maybe we can answer better. I don't know what that is.
Hey Ben, if you can provide more detail on in the question panel. Otherwise, we have your contact information and we will find the answer and get back to you. This one's from Kevin. When the auto power off is set, is there a warning period of time to temporarily disable in case the display is required beyond the scheduled off time?
Anthony, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, the answer is no. So if you set it up to turn off at 8 o'clock, it's going to turn off at 8 o'clock, and there is no message that says that it's up to turn off. It just does it. So you would have to be aware of that and make sure that you have a remote hand standby that you can push on again.
Okay, we have another question from Allah. Can we push the settings via LAN?
Yes, you can. So with our APIs, there are several ways to push settings via LAN control. You can also use third-party control systems. You can even use our TEOS application, for example, our BRAVIA meeting tools. There's tons of applications that allow you to do this, either programming them yourself or using already a Sony configured resource.
Okay, we have a question from Dan. It says, if I mount the Pro BRAVIA in portrait orientation, does it matter which way it's rotated, clockwise or counterclockwise?
So yes, it does matter. For proper ventilation, the display should be rotated counterclockwise, the Sony logo on the right-hand side.
Great. Question from Shapur. When you export and import settings, will it also carry the same PIN from Pro Mode to all other displays?
Yes, that is correct. So any pin that is set up in your Pro settings mode will be exported and all of them will have the same exact pin.
Another question from Allah. Is there a built-in set-top box in the display?
Anthony, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's kind of a unusual question because the set-top box is typically external to the display, and it's basically a PC or a media player that acts as the source for whatever content you want to drive the display with. In the case of BRAVIA, we've basically taken that set-top box functionality and integrated it into the display. That's the advantage of using the system-on-chip technology, which is basically a mini computer inside the display. And using the tools that Kiana showed you, you can import applications and run applications rather than running them on an external box or set-top box. So the set-top box is integrated into the display, the functionality of the set-top box.
Thank you, Anthony. Question from Mike. Is there any integration with Amazon Echo?
I know that we have it on BRAVIA in the sync area where you can ask, say, for example, your Amazon Echo to turn on your display or have volume control, but built into the display, it's not in there. We actually use Google Assistant built into our display, if that clarifies. Would you like to add anything, Anthony?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Question from Marcel. Can the Pro Mode settings be enabled through IP? And he gives an example. He says his campus has 50 displays. A USB stick is not very practical for large deployment.
Sure. So in that case, I would say that yes, if you'd like to build it yourself using the APIs, but again, like I stated earlier, there's also a lot of tools to help you streamline it that we've already developed for your use. A good example of this would be using our TEOS manage and control system to send those settings via IP. Our next webinar will go over in detail on how to do this. So not only are you setting up those Pro setting functionalities, but you can also manage these displays. You can push firmware, you can pinpoint issues and troubleshoot and create log systems. Okay,
another question from Ben. You mentioned that the display could be used to display information while the panel is not in use for a meeting. What is needed to do this?
Sure, there's two methods of doing this. So we have a free version of our Bravia meeting app that can be downloaded. For that, I would say reach out to your Sony account rep for more information. But with this application, you can set up a splash screen so that when the device is not in use, the screen is always shown. And then when an HDMI input signal is detected, it'll switch to that detection area. And then the second one would be, we also have a screensaver mode built into our Pro Bravia display. So after X amount of time, if it doesn't detect a signal, it will show a specific screensaver. We also have digital signage that can go on based on a schedule if you'd like as well. So there's multiple ways to do it. But the one that we showed for the University of earlier for the University of Central Florida, they were using Bravia Meeting.
Okay. Question from Edward. You stated Android connectivity for setup. Is there iOS connectivity for setup as well?
So when I mention Android, I mean it as we are an Android operating system. So you could scale and build custom APK applications via the Android so that you can access them either side-loading them or on the Android Play Store. As far as using iOS capabilities, you can definitely still use it for those that have Chromecast built in or wirelessly mirroring from your phone to your display. But in the case of every time I mention Android, that's what I'm referring to, is access to the Play Store.
Another question from Ben. In our network environment, DHCP is much preferred to static addressing. Can the display change its host name to be more relevant and allow us to use the API such as hostname/Sony/AV control?
I'm pretty sure that the answer is no, but I'm going to send it over to Anthony. Anthony, can host names be changed?
We had this question come up a couple weeks ago, and there was some back and forth correspondence with Japan. And there was a workaround way to do it. It's not as straightforward as you might think. If you can capture that email address, John, we can get back to that customer and answer the question with the guidance from Japan. DHCP is supported, of course. You can do static or DHCP for the IP address. But the host name changing, I believe there was a workaround solution, which I'm going to have to get back to you on.
Okay, and let's see, there was a request for a little bit more information on the warranty, and I think we needed to just make a clarification that for the advanced exchange, the customer would have to call the 800 number first to initiate the replacement. So just want to make sure that it's clear that the end user is the one who needs to initiate that by calling the 800 number. And I think it's listed on the slide here, correct, Kiana?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Pro support number
800.
is there, and also the pro support email as well. I always like to recommend users to document the issue. So say, for example, if your product was damaged during shipment, you can email the pro support line and attach images, and then it just makes the process go by faster.
Okay, and I see another Sony colleague has sent a message here saying that email is preferred by the Network Operations Center. So.
Yeah, and I want to add something to that as well. What the question that comes up is who should make the call. The tech support line is going to try to troubleshoot the issue, so it's best to have somebody who is at the unit or has intimate knowledge with what the issue is. If we have to talk to somebody who's removed from the issue, then it becomes a convoluted conversation. And it would be best for the person making the claim to either document it and give it to another person, or to call directly and say what the issue is. Because our support people will try to, do some basic troubleshooting with them. And if they're not at the unit, then it's difficult to get an answer quickly.
And it looks like we've come to the end of our questions. I appreciate everyone's active participation in the webinar, everyone's attention, and everyone's time. Just like as a reminder to let you all know to please mark your calendars and join us next week, May 19th, 1 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be doing an overview of TEOS workplace management solutions along with a live demonstration. Once again, if there are any follow-up questions that you have, or if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the Pro Mode settings in detail or our Pro BRAVIA displays, by all means, please reach out to your local Sony account manager or your local sales support engineer. We thank you all for your time, and we look forward to speaking with you next week. Thanks.